Dating back almost 90 years ago, there was a Middle Eastern nation named Persia. Persia had a ruler, Ahmad Shah Qajar, and he was leading an Islamic monarchy. Some of the reforms that Reza was introducing to Persia were socio-economic reforms, and they were recognizing the government, army, and army finances.
The Qajar family had a dynasty of its own, and it ruled all the way from 1785 to 1925. They came to power after deposing the last leader in the Zand dynasty. In 1796, Muhammad Khan Qajar was formally announced as the Shah of the Qajar dynasty. It was a monarchy until 1906, when they became a constitutional monarchy. The dynasty later collapsed.
The country's infrastructure was in need of development. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company was a great factor in the Iranian economy. It was founded in 1908, right after the discovery of immense oil field in Mesjid Soleiman, Iran. It was the very first company to extract oil in the Middle East, even before Saudi Arabia and Kuwait.
So who is Reza Khan Pahlavi? Reza was earlier a military officer who had become a master of Iran and was crowned as Reza Pahlavi in April 1926. Reza was an active figure of the Qajar dynasty's descent. After leading his fellow military officers and troops to join together and repel against the dynasty, Reza became the commander of the armed forces, the minister of war, and he exiled the country's previous Shah. After he came into power, he considered establishing a republic, but later established the Pahlavi dynasty instead.
Reza was successfully deposing leaders of the Qajar dynasty with his troops, as he was leader of Iran's Persian Cossack brigade. After 4 years of rebellion, the ruler of the Qajar dynasty was officially deposed, and Reza came to power.
One of the major actions Reza took off his agenda was building a legislative branch. In October 1925, the year in which the last ruler of the Qajar dynasty was deposed, a majlis, or a council, of Reza's men was formed and put Reza Khan into power as Reza Shah. They had the power to pass, amend, and repeal laws. Anything that Reza wanted to go through with had to be approved by the majlis. This was arranged in order to keep the country modernized and far from his rule being a dictatorship.
Reza's idea of a strong, modernized country was one that was mostly secular. He completely banned Islamic education and partially discarded Islamic law in order to keep the country modernized. He banned religious processions and replaced the Islamic calendar with the Persian solar calendar. Mosques were modernized, the call for prayer was frowned upon by Iranians who were supporting the religious reforms. Culture then changed by the Iranian people and discouraged pilgrimage to Mecca. Men to acquire European clothing and headgear was very encouraged. Women were encouraged to discard their veils. Some people were supported by these reforms, but others did not.
So what about Iran's economy? Reza Shah's reforms had a great effect on the country's economy and its industrialization. He built roads, made a wireless service, and took over the telegraph service, which was previously under control of the British. He also built a trans-Iranian railway that went from the Persian Gulf to the Caspian. He was especially proud of this railway because he was able to build it without any loans from foreign governments. He also set up trade monopolies and limited the freedom of the merchants. He established the National Bank of Iran. He also founded the University of Tehran in 1934 and established the Persian Academy, an educational center. Also, the number of modern industrial plants increased by 17 times, and the number of miles of highway went from 2,000 to 14,000 under his rule. All of these things helped Iran rise to become a much more modern country than before.
Education was a very important factor in modernization to Pahlavi. Schooling increased drastically for boys and girls. Although Reza was known for the University at Tehran in 1934, he had much care for his peasants and workers. Night schools were common, and the soldiers in the army were constantly attending these schools. Any soldier that didn't gain these skills of writing and reading, their commander wouldn't be promoted. Other factors of the modernization, such as sports and games, were advanced by Pahlavi,